May 19, 1944, 2:47 a.m., north of Bougainville Island. The Black Pacific swallows all light. Inside the cramped Combat Information Center of USS England, Lieutenant Commander Walton Pendleton stares at a green phosphor screen. A single blip pulses Japanese submarine I-16 carrying 40 torpedoes meant for American troop transports. His sonar operator whispers, "He doesn't know we're here." Pendleton's hand hovers over a red firing button. In 12 days, this 306-foot destroyer escort will do what no warship in history has ever done, and the Japanese Imperial Navy will never recover. May 16, 1944, Pearl Harbor Station, Hypo. Lieutenant Commander Joe Rochefort slid a decoded message across Admiral Charles Lockwood's desk. His hands shook, not from fear, but from 3 days without sleep. Operation A-Go, 17 Japanese submarines. They're building a picket line from truck to the Admiralties. Lockwood read it once, twice. The paper crumpled slightly in his grip. If they report our carrier positions... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Both men understood 127,000 American sailors sailing straight into ambush. Saipan invasion canceled. The Pacific War extended by a year, maybe 2. Lockwood reached for the phone. "Get me the England." Rochefort blinked. "The destroyer escort. She's got the new weapon, and a captain who actually believes in mathematics." "Sir, she's a tin can. 17 submarines. We don't need to sink 17. Lockwood's voice went flat. "We need to sink 7. The ones directly in our path. Can England do it?" Silence. "I don't know, sir." "Then let's find out." May 18th, 1944. 0600 hours. USS England forward deck. Walton Pendleton stood at the bow, watching USS George and USS Raby slice through the morning mist to form up on England's flanks. 3 destroyer escorts, 540 men total. Hunting ground, 3,000 square miles of empty ocean. His executive officer, Lieutenant John Williamson, came up beside him. 31 years old insurance adjuster from Ohio, perpetually worried. Crews asking about Hedgehog Skipper. What about it? Whether it actually works. Charleston tried it 8 times last month. 0 kills. Pendleton adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses. Before the war, he'd taught high school algebra in Virginia. Explained quadratic equations to teenagers who wanted to be anywhere else. Now he explained killing to men who'd never fired a shot in anger. "Charleston," he said quietly. "Used it like a shotgun. Fired at maximum range, hoped for luck. And we're different. We're going to use it like a scalpel." Pendleton turned to face him. "Depth charges explode whether they hit or not. Boom. Ocean lights up. Sonar goes blind. Submarine hears it, dives deep, waits you out. Success rate 1%. And Hedgehog, contact fused, 24 projectiles. No explosion unless they hit steel. We maintain sonar lock the entire time. No warning, no blindness, just mathematics." Williamson studied his captain's face. Pendleton's wife, Margaret, was 8 months pregnant back in Norfolk. He'd received the telegram 3 days before they shipped out. "It's a girl. Wish you were here." "You really think we can sink submarines with math?" Pendleton's voice was almost a whisper. "I think fear makes men predictable, John, and predictable things can be calculated." He walked back toward the bridge. "Battle stations in 30 minutes. We hunt tonight." May 19th, 1944. 0200 hours. England ran dark. All external lights killed. Engines throttled to minimize wake. The night swallowed everything, Moonstar's horizon. Inside the Combat Information Center, Sonarman Second Class Herbert Fryer sat hunched over his equipment headphones, pressed so tight they left red marks on his temples. 22 years old. From rural Kentucky. Perfect pitch. Could hear a diesel engine charging batteries from 4,000 yards away. At 2:47 a.m., he heard something. His hand shot up. "Contact!" The words crackled through the ship's intercom like electricity. Men jerked awake. Boots hit deck plates. Within 90 seconds, 186 sailors stood at battle stations. Pendleton arrived on the bridge in 40 seconds, boots, unlaced shirt, half-buttoned. "Talk to me, Fryer." "Bearing 117, range 1500 yards, speed 6 knots. Twin screws. He's charging batteries, sir. Doesn't know we're here." Pendleton moved to the chart table. His hands were steady. Williamson's were not. "Intercept course. 095, 11 minutes to firing position." Pendleton picked up the intercom. "This is the captain. We have contact. Japanese submarine, range 1500 yards. We're going to kill it. No one talks. No one drops anything. He doesn't know we exist. Let's keep it that way." He released the button. "Battle stations. Tell George and Raby to hang back. If we miss, they get second shot." The alarm rang once, short, sharp, final. "Combat Information Center. 0251 hours." The room was smaller than a closet. Red battle lamps cast everything in bloodlight. Fryer's face was pressed against his equipment hands, adjusting frequency dials with surgeon precision. "Range 1200 yards. He's still on course." Pendleton stood behind him, one hand on the firing panel. 24 spigot mortars mounted forward. Red button. Simple as a light switch. Press it, and 65-pound projectiles arc into darkness. If the math was right, they'd bracket the submarine. If the math was wrong, they'd hit nothing waste ammunition, and the target would dive to 400 feet and vanish. "Increase speed to 18 knots, Pendleton ordered. "Come right to 095. The deck tilted. England's bow bit into swells. Then Fryer's voice tight with tension. "Target's turning. Coming left. He's diving." Pendleton's hand stopped mid-motion. His knuckles wrapped around the compass went white. He heard us. "Passing 100 feet, 120, leveling at 150. Williamson leaned close. "Skipper, if he's at 150 feet and turning into us, doctrine says we fire at 600 yards. Doctrine was written by men who don't trust their sonar." Pendleton's voice stayed level. "We fire at 300 yards. 300? Williamson's eyes widened. "That's knife fighting range. If he sees us..." "He won't." "How do you know?" "Because he's scared, and scared men make mistakes." 258 hours. The range closed like a countdown to execution. 1,000 yards. 800. 600. Inside the sonar room, Fryer could hear everything. Ballast tanks adjusting. Screws biting water. And something else, faint, almost imperceptible voices. Japanese sailors talking inside the hull. Laughing. Unaware that death was calculating their exact position, 78 feet above. Range 500. Pendleton's hand moved to the firing panel. Somewhere below, 97 men were living the last minutes of their lives, thinking about home, about family, about the war ending someday. He pushed the thought away. Range 400. Steady. Range 300. Pendleton pressed the button. Fire Hedgehog. Whump, 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 whump. 24 sledgehammers hitting steel drums simultaneously. The projectiles arced forward, barely visible against the black sky, and splashed down 250 yards ahead in a circular pattern. Then silence. Pendleton counted. 1 Mississippi. 2 Mississippi. 3 Mississippi. At 4 Mississippi, the ocean exploded. Not all at once. 1 detonation. Then another. Then 2 simultaneously. 4 hits. 4 35-pound Torpex warheads punching through submarine steel at 150 feet depth. The surface boiled. White water fountained 30 feet high. The sonar screen went solid white. When it cleared, nothing. No engine noise, no voices, no contact. Just oil. It rose, slowly, thick and black, spreading across the surface like a wound. Then debris. Cork insulation, wooden planks. A sailor's cap with Japanese characters stitched inside, floating empty under the stars. Around Pendleton, England's crew erupted, shouting, embracing. Men who'd never believed in Hedgehog now believed. Men who thought they'd spend the war escorting cargo now understood they were hunters. But Pendleton didn't move. He removed his glasses, cleaned them with a handkerchief, replaced them. Then he turned to Williamson, whose face was still frozen in shock. Mark position. Photograph debris. Send contact report to Com Subpack. 1 enemy submarine destroyed position 3 DG-12 is 153 DG-38, E-time 0323. Request identification. Aye, sir. Pendleton started toward his cabin. Stopped. Turned back. John? Yes, sir. There are 6 more. May 19th, 1944. 14:20 hours. The message from Pearl Harbor came 8 hours later. Radio man Chief Eddie Foster tore it from the decoder and ran it to the bridge. Pendleton read it once, folded it, put it in his pocket. From Com Subpack to USS England debris confirms I-16. Fleet submarine commissioned 1940 crew, 97. Well done. Continue patrol. 97 men. Williamson waited for some reaction. Remorse, pride, anything. Pendleton just returned to his charts pages covered in pencil marks, angles, vectors, probabilities. What are you doing, calculating where the next one will be? Skipper, we just sank a submarine. First hedgehog kill in history. Shouldn't we celebrate? Pendleton didn't look up. 97 men just drowned in a steel coffin, John. They had mothers. Some had children. They were doing their duty same as us. Then why'd you kill them? Pendleton finally looked up. Behind his glasses, his eyes were tired. Because if I didn't, they'd kill 5,000 of ours? That's the mathematics. I don't have to like it. I just have to do it. He returned to his charts. 6 more submarines out there, each one carrying enough torpedoes to sink a carrier. We find them or they find our fleet. Simple as that. May 20th, 1944. 0300 hours. Officer's wardroom. Most of the crew couldn't sleep. Victory tasted like coffee and adrenaline. But in the wardroom, over powdered eggs that tasted like cardboard, Williamson asked the question everyone was thinking. What if they change tactics? Go deeper. Stop charging at night. Pendleton set down his fork. Then we adapt faster. Adapt. How? By listening. Every submarine commander is human. He gets tired. He makes mistakes. Our job is to calculate what mistake he'll make and be there when he does. Lieutenant Robert Helm, the gunnery officer. 28 former college football players spoke up. With respect, Skipper, you're talking like it's a math problem. These are submarines, not equations. Pendleton smiled thin, almost sad. Everything's a math problem, Bob. Trajectory, velocity, probability, even fear. He leaned forward. You know what the Japanese commanders are doing right now. They're getting orders from Tokyo. New patrol patterns, new security protocols. But they're still human, still predictable. How? Because they're scared. And scared men always make the same mistake. What's that? They hesitate. Pendleton stood. Fear makes you second guess. You hear a sound. Do you dive now or wait? You need to surface. Do you do it here or 3 miles west? Every decision takes 2 seconds longer when you're afraid. He moved to the door. And 2 seconds is all we need. May 21st, 1944, 1900 hours. England's radio room intercepted a Japanese transmission, short encrypted emanating from coordinates. 3DE-27's 154 DG-12. E Station Hypo decoded it 6 hours later. RO-106 to Fleet Command enemy movements confirmed. Proceeding to secondary position. Will report at 0400. Pendleton stood over the chart table, compass in hand, drawing lines. He's moving north. Recharge schedule means he'll surface between 0300 and 0400. That's a 100-mile search area, Williamson said. He'll take the shortest route. Submarines conserve fuel, especially this far from base. Pendleton's pencil traced a line. He'll be here. He tapped a point. 3DG-34's 154 DG-20E. How can you possibly know that? Pendleton looked up. Because it's what I'd do. May 22nd, 1944. 03:15 hours. Fryer's voice crackled through the intercom. Contact, bearing 271, range 1,800 yards. Pendleton was on the bridge before the words finished echoing. Classification, RO class, single screw. He's surface charging batteries. This time Pendleton didn't hesitate. Battle stations, intercept course, flank speed. England surged forward, bow throwing white water. The submarine heard them at 900 yards, crash-dived in 40 seconds. But 40 seconds was too long. At low 3:37, Pendleton fired. 6 explosions, RO-106 gone. 104 more Japanese sailors swallowed by the Pacific. Pendleton marked the position, photographed the debris, sent the report. Then he returned to his charts. 5 more, he said quietly. And the crew, watching their captain work through the night, pencil scratching against paper, calculating angles they couldn't see, hunting submarines that hadn't surfaced yet, began to understand something. This wasn't a man, this was a weapon, and the ocean had just learned to be afraid. Years later, Williamson would write in his memoir, Pendleton never celebrated a kill. He'd mark the position, photograph the oil, return to his charts, already hunting the next one. It was like watching a man solve crossword puzzles while the world burned around him. But here's what I didn't understand. Then he wasn't cold. He was carrying all of it, every sailor, every explosion, every calculation, in silence. Because if he let himself feel it, he'd stop. And stopping meant American boys died. So he calculated. And he killed. And he saved thousands by drowning hundreds. That's not mathematics. That's sacrifice. 2 kills in 4 days. The crew started calling Pendleton the Calculator. He didn't smile at the nickname. He barely spoke at all anymore, just stood over his charts through the night, pencil moving in small circles, calculating death. May 23rd, 01:40 hours. England's radio room picked up another transmission. Faint fragmentary coordinates scrambled. Station Hypo decoded it in 3 hours. RO-104 to Tokyo, position compromised. Request new patrol sector. Williamson brought the message to Pendleton's cabin. Found him asleep at his desk, head on folded arms, charts crumpled beneath him. The photograph of Margaret and their daughter, born 3 weeks ago, named Sarah, a child he'd never held, sat face down beside cold coffee. Skipper. Pendleton jerked awake. For half a second his eyes were somewhere else, somewhere that wasn't steel and ocean and killing. Then the mask returned. What is it? RO-104. Transmission intercepted. He knows we're hunting. Pendleton read the decoded message once. His jaw tightened. Good. Good. Scared submarines make mistakes faster. He stood reaching for his jacket. Where did the transmission originate? 3DG-41's 154 DG-35E. Pendleton moved to the chart table, compass already in hand. Drew 3 lines, patrol pattern, intercept vector, escape route. He'll run northwest, deeper water, more room to hide. The pencil stopped. But he has to surface to recharge, and when he does, we'll be waiting. No. Pendleton looked up. His eyes were bloodshot, rimmed with exhaustion. We'll be there. Waiting implies uncertainty. I know where he'll surface. I know when. The only variable is whether we arrive first. He grabbed his hat. General quarters. Set course 350. Flank speed. 6:12 hours. Dawn broke red over a gray sea. Fog rolled in thick, visibility down to 200 yards. England cut through it like a blade, radar sweeping in 30-second intervals. On the bridge, Pendleton stood motionless, binoculars, scanning nothing but white. Beside him, Lieutenant Helm, the gunnery officer who'd questioned mathematics 4 days ago, shifted weight from foot to foot. Skipper, we've been in this grid for 3 hours. Maybe he went a different direction. He didn't. But if the calculation's off, it's not. Helm fell silent. Around them the fog pressed close, muffling sound, erasing the horizon. England had become a ghost ship alone in white emptiness. Then Fryer's voice crackled through the intercom, tight with excitement. Sonar contact. Bearing 328, range 2,000 yards. Classification RO class, surfaced stationary. Pendleton didn't move, didn't speak, just smiled, thin, grim, exhausted. He's charging batteries, he said quietly, just like I calculated. Battle stations. No. Pendleton lowered his binoculars. If we sound the alarm, he'll hear it through the fog. Maintain silent running. Come right to 328. Slow to 8 knots. England turned like a hunting cat. Silent. Patient. The fog swallowed even her wake. At 200 yards, the submarine's silhouette emerged, low dark conning tower barely visible. Men on deck smoking, laughing, unaware. At 900 yards, one of them looked up, saw England's bow materialize from the fog. His cigarette fell from his lips. He screamed. The submarine's klaxon wailed. Men scattered. The conning tower hatch slammed shut. Too late. Crash dive, Fryer shouted. He's going under. Fire now, Pendleton ordered. Range is 1,100 yards, sir. Hedgehog's optimal. Fire now. Williamson pressed the button. 24 projectiles arced through the fog, splashed down in a wide pattern. The submarine's hull was already submerging 30 feet, 40 feet, diving fast. Silence. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3, 4 explosions, then 2 more, then nothing. The fog cleared slightly. Oil spread across the surface thick and black. A life raft floated up empty, then a shoe, then a hand still gripping a wrench. Pendleton turned away. Mark position. Send report. RO-104 destroyed. He walked to his cabin, closed the door, sat on his bunk with his head in his hands. When Williamson knocked 10 minutes later, Pendleton's voice was steady again. Come in. Crew's asking for an address, Skipper. 3 kills. They want to hear from you. Tell them to get some sleep. We're hunting again tonight. Sir, with respect, you haven't slept in 40 hours. I'll sleep when they're all dead. Williamson hesitated. The Japanese or us? Pendleton looked up. His eyes were hollow. Both. May 24th, 1830 hours. England rendezvoused with USS George and USS Raby to refuel and rearm. Supplies came across on cables, depth charges, food mail. The mailbag held 17 letters for Pendleton, 15 from Margaret, 2 from his mother. He opened none of them. Instead, he stood on the bridge, watching the supply transfer, smoking a cigarette he didn't remember lighting. Chief Machinist's mate Donald Moss came up beside him, 52 years old, 30 years in the Navy, had seen men break before. Captain looks tired. Captain's fine. Captain looks like he's carrying ghosts. Pendleton took a long drag, said nothing. How many now? Moss asked quietly. 3 submarines, 307 Japanese sailors. And how many Americans did we save? Pendleton flicked ash into the wind. I don't know. Thousands, maybe. If those submarines had found our carriers. He trailed off. But I don't see their faces. I only see the ones I killed. That's because you're human, sir. No. Pendleton's voice went flat. If I was human, I'd stop. I'd say 3 is enough, but I can't stop. Not until they're all gone. He turned to Moss. You know what I realized yesterday? I'm good at this. Killing. Calculating where scared men will run and putting explosives there. I'm better at killing than I ever was at teaching. War makes us into things we're not. Does it? Pendleton interrupted. Or does it just show us what we always were? Before Moss could answer, Fryer's voice crackled over the intercom. Captain to CIC. Urgent message from Com Subpack. The message was short. From Com Subpack to USS England, 3 kills confirmed. Well done. Return to Manus for refit and commendation ceremony. Pendleton read it twice, crumpled it, threw it in the trash. Sir. Williamson stared. That's a direct order. I know. You can't refuse. Watch me. Pendleton moved to the chart table. Fleet radio intercepted 2 more transmissions today, RO-116 and RO-108. Both still active. Both between us and our carriers. Skipper, we've been on patrol for 6 days. Crew's exhausted. We're low on ammunition. We have 17 Hedgehog projectiles left. That's enough for 2 more attacks. And if we miss... Pendleton looked up. His voice was very quiet. Then we ram them. Williamson's face went pale. You're serious. Do I look like I'm joking? Around them, the CIC fell silent. Radio men stopped typing. Sonar men turned in their chairs. Everyone stared at their captain. This man who'd gone from high school teacher to submarine killer in 4 days, who calculated death like algebra problems, who refused direct orders because the mathematics weren't finished. Finally, Williamson spoke, his voice careful. Captain, I need to ask, are you doing this to save American lives or because you can't stop? Pendleton's hands, flat on the chart table, didn't move. Does it matter? Yes, sir, it does. Long silence. The ship creaked. The ocean breathed. Send reply to Com Subpack, Pendleton said finally. USS England respectfully requests extension of patrol. 2 targets remain in operational area. Estimate 48 hours to completion. Recommend return to port upon mission completion. They'll relieve you of command. Then they'll relieve me. Pendleton's voice hardened. But not until I finish this. He walked out of CIC without another word. Com Subpack's response came 3 hours later. From Com Subpack to USS England, request approved. 48 hours, extension granted. Do not engage beyond this window. Admiral Lockwood sends, finish the line. Pendleton read it once, folded it carefully, put it in his pocket next to the 17 unopened letters from his wife. That night, alone in his cabin, he opened one letter. Just one. Margaret's handwriting neat and careful. Dearest Walt, Sarah has your eyes. She looks at me the way you used to look at math problems, like the world is a puzzle she can solve if she just thinks hard enough. The doctor says she's healthy, strong, a fighter. I know you can't tell me where you are or what you're doing, but I know you. I know that look you get when you're solving something difficult. Please remember the war will end, but our family is forever. Come home to us. Please. All my love, Margaret. Pendleton read it 3 times. Then he folded it, placed it back in the envelope, and put it in his desk drawer. He didn't open the others. Instead, he returned to his charts. Drew more lines. Calculated more death. Because the mathematics weren't finished. And neither was he. May 25th, 22:30 hours. Radar contact. Surface target bearing 092, range 8,000 yards. Pendleton was on the bridge in 20 seconds. Classification. Submarine, sir. RO-116. She's surfaced running northwest at 12 knots. She's running from us, Helm said. No. Pendleton studied the radar scope. She's running toward the fleet, trying to get in position before dawn to report carrier movements. How do you know? Because that's what I do. He grabbed the intercom. Battle stations, intercept course, flank speed. We have 90 minutes before she reaches reporting range. England surged forward, engines screaming, bow throwing white water 30 feet high. At 0047 hours, range dropped to 4,000 yards. The submarine detected them, crash-dived in 40 seconds. This time, Pendleton didn't wait for optimal range, didn't calculate perfect geometry. Just watched the sonar screen as the target descended 100 feet, 150, 200, and pressed the firing button at 800 yards. Miss. The projectiles splashed down in empty water. The submarine continued diving 250 feet, 300 beyond Hedgehog's effective range. "Lost contact," Fryer reported, voice tight. "He's gone deep and cut engines. Total silence." Pendleton stood motionless at the chart table. Around him, the CIC held its breath. "He has to surface eventually," Williamson said quietly. "He can't stay down forever." "No." Pendleton's voice was distant. "But he can wait us out. Batteries give him 6 hours submerged. We have 12 Hedgehog projectiles left. We can't afford to waste them on guesses." "So what do we do?" Pendleton looked up. His eyes were bloodshot face, gaunt with exhaustion. "We wait. And we think like a scared man." He moved to the sonar station, pulled up a chair, sat down beside Fryer. "If you were commanding that submarine right now, what would you do?" Fryer blinked, surprised to be asked. "Sir, you're 300 feet down. Batteries running low. You know someone up there wants you dead. What do you do?" Fryer thought for a moment. I'd wait until I thought they'd given up. Maybe 2 hours. Then surface fast. Get a quick recharge dive again." "Where would you surface?" "As far from the last contact point as possible." Pendleton nodded slowly. "Range and bearing." "Maybe 3 miles northwest. Put distance between us and them." Pendleton stood, moved to the chart table, drew a circle 3 miles northwest of their current position. "That's where he'll be. In exactly 2 hours and 17 minutes. "How can you possibly know?" "Because I've been calculating how scared men think for 6 days now." He looked at Williamson. "Set course 320. Dead slow. We move into position quietly and wait." "And if you're wrong," Pendleton's smile was grim, "then I've killed my last submarine." 314 hours. England drifted silent in black water, engines idling at minimum, no lights, no radar sweeps, just listening. Pendleton stood on the bridge, stopwatch in hand, counting down. 2 hours, 10 minutes, 5. At exactly 03:17 hours, Fryer's whisper crackled through the intercom. "Sonar contact. Bearing 332, range 1,800 yards. He's surfacing." Pendleton didn't move, just clicked the stopwatch. 2 hours, 17 minutes, exactly as calculated. Battle stations, silent running maintained, close to 400 yards before firing. England crept forward. At 600 yards, they could hear the submarine's diesel engines starting rough, loud, hungry for air after hours submerged. At 400 yards, Pendleton pressed the button. The Hedgehog fired quieter this time, almost gentle. 24 projectiles arced through darkness. 4 seconds later, 8 explosions. The ocean erupted. Fire and debris punched through the surface. The submarine broke in half-stern section, rising vertical, before sliding backward into the deep. The bow section floated for 10 seconds, then followed. Silence. Then oil. Always oil. Pendleton turned away before the debris finished surfacing. "Mark position. RO-116's destroyed. Send report." He walked to his cabin. This time he locked the door. When Williamson knocked 20 minutes later, there was no answer. When he knocked again an hour later, Pendleton's voice was hoarse. "Go away." "Skipper, we have orders. 1 target left. RO-108. Station hypo intercepted." "I said go away." Silence. Then, "Sir, with respect, you can rest after. But right now, 300 men on this ship need their captain. And somewhere out there, RO-108 is hunting our fleet. We're the only ones who can stop it." Long pause. The door opened. Pendleton stood there, uniform, wrinkled face, unshaven eyes red. But his voice was steady. "Where is it?" "Last transmission placed at 40 miles northwest. Moving toward the fleet at 8 knots. Pendleton looked at his watch. 04:30 hours. "We'll intercept by dawn. Prepare for engagement." He stepped out of the cabin, stopped, turned back to Williamson. "John." "Yes, sir." "After this one, I'm done." Whatever ComSubPac orders next, I'm requesting transfer to shore duty. I can't. He trailed off. I can't calculate anymore. Williamson nodded, said nothing. Because they both knew there would be no shore duty. Not for the man who'd rewritten submarine warfare. Not for the captain who'd sunk 4 submarines in 6 days. The Navy would keep using him until there was nothing left to use. And Walton Pendleton, former high school math teacher, husband, father, would keep killing until the ocean ran out of targets or he ran out of soul. Whichever came first. In the cramped space between duty and humanity, calculation and conscience, mathematics and madness, a small ship hunted through the night toward one final kill. And the ocean, indifferent to both victor and victim, kept all their secrets in silent darkness below. May 26th, 05:47 hours. England had been hunting RO-108 for 11 hours. The ocean was empty. The radar showed nothing. Sonar heard only whales and the grinding of their own screws through water. Pendleton stood on the bridge, unmoving, a statue carved from exhaustion. He hadn't slept in 53 hours. Hadn't eaten in 14. His hands shook when he held the binoculars, so he'd stopped holding them. "Skipper!" Chief Moss appeared beside him with coffee and a sandwich. "You need to eat." Pendleton didn't turn. "I need to find RO-108. "You need to be alive when you do." "Do I?" Pendleton's voice was hollow. 4 submarines, Moss. 412 Japanese sailors. I keep seeing their faces in the oil slicks. Young faces, scared faces, just like ours. Moss set the coffee down on the chart table. "Sir, permission to speak freely." "Denied." "I'm speaking anyway." Moss moved closer, lowered his voice. "You think you're the first captain to carry ghosts? You're not. I've served under 7 commanding officers. 3 broke. 1 ate his pistol. The other 2 just stopped giving orders until someone relieved them." Pendleton finally looked at him. "Which one am I?" "Neither, because you're still hunting, still calculating, still doing what needs doing even though it's killing you." Moss paused. "But here's what I need you to understand, this crew. They'd follow you into hell. They believe in you, but they need you to believe in yourself, just for 48 more hours. Then you can fall apart." Pendleton picked up the coffee. His hands were steadier now. "What if I can't find it? Then we go home. 4 kills is enough to change the war. But 5 would end this patrol sector completely. 5 means the carrier group sails safely. 5 means—" "Skipper." Moss's voice was gentle. "You can't save everyone. You can only do the mathematics you can do." Before Pendleton could respond, Fryer's voice erupted through the intercom, sharp with excitement. "Sonar contact. Bearing 273, range 4,500 yards, submerged depth approximately 200 feet, speed 9 knots. Pendleton was at the chart table in 3 strides. Coffee abandoned, exhaustion forgotten. Classification. Twin screws. RO class signature. "Sir, it's him. It's RO-108. For the first time in days, something like relief crossed Pendleton's face. Not joy, not satisfaction, just relief that the mathematics might finally be finished. "Battle stations. Come left to 273, close to firing range." The alarm sounded. 186 men moved to their positions for the 5th time in 7 days. But this time felt different. Heavier. Final. In the engine room, the turbines screamed. In the gun mounts, crews checked weapons they probably wouldn't use. In the sonar room, Fryer pressed his headphones tight, listening to a submarine that didn't know it was already dead. At 0612 hours range, dropped to 2,000 yards. The submarine maintained course and speed. No evasive action, no indication they'd been detected. "He doesn't know we're here," Williamson said quietly. "He knows." Pendleton studied the sonar display. "He's just betting we'll lose him in the thermal layers. Watch, he'll drop another 50 feet in the next 2 minutes. 90 seconds later, the contact descended to 250 feet. Williamson stared. "How did you—" Because that's what I'd do. Pendleton's voice was mechanical, now running on discipline and muscle memory. He thinks depth equals safety. He's wrong. Hedgehog effective range at that depth. Marginal. Maybe 40% hit probability. Should we wait for him to come shallower? No. Pendleton's hand moved to the firing panel. We have 12 projectiles left. If we wait, he might detect us and dive to 400 feet. Then we lose him completely. So we take the low probability shot. We take the only shot we have. At 0619 hours, range closed to 800 yards. The submarine was still descending 270 feet, 280 pushing the limits of Hedgehog's trajectory. Pendleton's finger hovered over the red button. His hand wasn't shaking anymore. Everything inside him had gone perfectly still, perfectly cold, perfectly calculated. Fire, Hedgehog. 12 projectiles launched, half their remaining ammunition arcing into gray morning light, splashing down in a tight pattern. This time, the weight felt eternal. 1 Mississippi. 2 Mississippi. 3 Mississippi. 4. 5. Nothing. Miss. Fryer reported, voice tight. Target continuing on course, increasing speed to 12 knots. Sir, he heard us. He's running. Around the CIC, the crew's faces went pale. They'd used half their ammunition. The submarine knew they were here, and now it was running toward the fleet, racing to report carrier positions before England could stop it. Pendleton stood motionless. For 10 seconds he didn't speak, didn't move, just stared at the sonar display as the contact pulled away, 900 yards, 1,100. Then his voice came out very quiet, very steady. Flank speed, pursuit course, reload Hedgehog with remaining projectiles. Sir, Williamson said carefully, we only have 12 left. If we miss again, we won't. How can you know that? Pendleton turned. His eyes were empty, but his voice was absolute. Because I'm not calculating anymore. I'm just finishing. The chase lasted 4 hours. RO-108 ran northwest at maximum submerged speed, 12 knots, burning batteries desperate. England followed at 18 knots, maintaining sonar contact, waiting for the inevitable. At 10:47 hours, the submarine's speed dropped to 8 knots, then 6, then 4. His batteries are dying, Fryer reported. He has to surface or suffocate. Pendleton checked his watch. How long? 30 minutes, maybe less. Where will he surface? Fryer hesitated. This wasn't a sonar question. It was a prediction, a calculation, the kind of mathematics that had defined this entire patrol. Sir, I can't. Yes, you can. Pendleton moved beside him. You've been listening to submarines for 7 days. You know how they think. Where would you surface? Fryer closed his eyes, listening. Not just to the submarine's machinery, but to something deeper. The rhythm of desperation. The cadence of fear. He'll want maximum distance from us before surfacing. But he's low on power, so he can't go far. He'll angle west, try to put a thermal layer between us, then surface fast for a quick recharge. How far west? 3 miles, maybe 4. Pendleton moved to the chart table, drew a circle. We go there now. Dead slow. No radar. We wait. And if he surfaces somewhere else? Pendleton didn't answer, because they both knew there were no more second chances. 12 projectiles. 1 shot. If the mathematics failed, the submarine escaped, reported the fleet's position, and thousands died. Everything depended on Pendleton being right one more time. At 11:34 hours, England sat silent in empty ocean. Engines idling at bare minimum. No movement. No sound. Just waiting. On the bridge, Pendleton stood with his stopwatch, counting down minutes in his head. Around him, the crew barely breathed. Williamson came up beside him. Skipper, I need to say something. Not now. Yes, now. Williamson's voice was firm. If this doesn't work, if we lose contact, I want you to know you did everything right. 4 submarines in 7 days. You changed naval warfare. You saved thousands of lives. Whatever happens next, that's enough." Pendleton kept staring at the ocean. When he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "It's not about enough, John. It's about finishing. I started this hunt, and I need to end it. Not for the Navy, not for the war, for me. Because if I don't finish, if that submarine escapes because my mathematics failed—" He trailed off. "I won't be able to live with more ghosts." "You're carrying too many already." "I know." Pendleton's hand gripped the rail. "But I can carry one more, just one more. Then I'm done." At 11:37 hours, Fryer's voice cut through the silence. "Sonar contact. Bearing 285, range 3,200 yards. He's surfacing." Pendleton clicked the stopwatch, looked at the position. 3 miles west. Exactly as calculated. He closed his eyes, breathed once, opened them. Battle stations. Approach course. Silent running. Close to 400 yards before firing. England moved forward a Predator's final stalk. The submarine broke surface at 11:39 hours, conning tower first, then deckwater pouring off steel plates. Hatches opened. Men emerged gasping for air, unaware. At 11:42 hours, range dropped to 400 yards. Pendleton pressed the button. 12 projectiles, their last ammunition, their final calculation arced through gray morning light. This time Pendleton didn't count. He just watched. The projectiles splashed down in a perfect bracket around the submarine. For 3 seconds nothing happened. Then the ocean exploded. Not 4 hits, not 6, 10. 10 simultaneous detonations, 35-pound Torpex warheads punching through submarine steel from every angle. The RO-108, lifted out of the water, actually lifted bow and stern, rising simultaneously, then broke in half at the pressure hull. Both sections hung suspended for one impossible moment before plunging back into the ocean. The noise was catastrophic. The shockwave rattled England's hull. Windows cracked. Light bulbs shattered. When the water settled, there was nothing. No debris, no oil, no survivors. Just empty ocean and silence. On England's bridge, no one cheered. No one moved. They just stood there staring at where a submarine had been 3 seconds ago, where 114 Japanese sailors had been breathing and thinking and hoping to survive. Pendleton turned away, walked to the chart table, picked up a red grease pencil. Drew an X over RO-108's last position. Then he set the pencil down, removed his glasses, and closed his eyes. "Mark position. Send final report to ComSubPac RO-108, destroyed position, 3DG-52s 154 DG-47, E-time, 142, patrol area cleared, request permission to return to port." His voice was steady, mechanical, empty. "Sir." Williamson approached carefully. "Are you—" "I'm fine." Pendleton opened his eyes, put his glasses back on. 5 submarines in 12 days. Mission complete. Mathematics finished. He walked toward his cabin, stopped at the door, turned back. "John, send one more message. Personal to Admiral Lockwood. Text, request immediate transfer to shore duty upon arrival Manus. Reason medical. Sign it with my name." "Medical, sir, you're not—" "I'm not injured. I'm not sick." Pendleton's voice cracked just slightly. "I'm just done killing." He closed the door. ComSubPac's response came 2 hours later. From ComSubPac to USS England, 5 kills confirmed. Patrol area secured. Return to Manus immediately. Well done does not begin to cover it. Shore duty request denied. You're too valuable. Admiral Lockwood sends. There will always be an England in the United States Navy. Williamson brought the message to Pendleton's cabin. Found him sitting on his bunk, 17 unopened letters from Margaret spread across the blanket. He'd opened none of them. Just arranged them by postmark date earliest to latest, a paper timeline of a life he'd stopped living 12 days ago. They denied your transfer. Pendleton said nothing. Skipper, you need to... Read me the last line again. Williamson looked at the message. There will always be an England in the United States Navy. That's not a compliment. Pendleton's voice was hollow. That's a threat. They're telling me I don't get to quit. I'm a weapon now, and weapons don't get to choose when they stop killing. He picked up one of Margaret's letters, the most recent one, held it without opening it. You know what's in these updates about Sarah, about how she smiled for the first time, about how she looks like me, about how Margaret tells her daddy's coming home soon. He set the letter down. But I'm not coming home, not really, because the man she married, the math teacher who believed numbers could solve anything, he died somewhere in these 12 days, and I don't know what's left. Williamson sat down on the opposite bunk. For a long time, neither man spoke. Finally, you saved thousands of lives, sir. By taking 526. Pendleton looked up. I know the exact number, John. 412 before today. 114 from RO 108. 526 men who had families, who had dreams, who were just doing their duty like us. His hands were shaking again. And you want to know the worst part? I'd do it again. Tomorrow. Because the mathematics work. Because I'm good at it. Because somewhere in these 12 days I stopped being a teacher and became a killer, and I don't know how to go back. Before Williamson could respond, footsteps pounded down the corridor. Moss burst through the door, face flushed with urgency. Captain, we have a problem. Crew's requesting to see you. All of them. They're assembled on the main deck. Pendleton stood slowly. What's this about? They want to tell you something, sir. Something you need to hear. Pendleton emerged onto the main deck to find 186 men standing at attention, not because they'd been ordered to, because they'd chosen to. Every sailor, every officer, every cook and machinist and gunner standing in perfect formation under gray Pacific sky. As Pendleton appeared, Chief Moss called out, 3 cheers for the captain, hip hip, hooray, hip hip, hooray, hip hip, hooray. The sound echoed across empty ocean. Then silence. Moss stepped forward. Captain, the men asked me to speak for them. So here it is, plain and simple. We know what this patrol cost you. We see it in your eyes. We hear it in your voice. And we want you to know every man on this ship would follow you into hell and back. Not because you're a killer, but because you're a man who carries the weight so we don't have to. Around him, sailors nodded. Some had tears in their eyes. You think you're a weapon? You're wrong, sir. You're a shield. You stood between the Japanese submarines and our fleet, between duty and madness, between calculation and conscience, and you held the line when most men would have broken. Moss's voice strengthened. 5 submarines in 12 days. Nobody in history has done that. Nobody will again. But that's not why we're here. We're here because you never celebrated a kill, never forgot they were human, never stopped carrying the cost. That's not a killer, sir. That's a warrior who remembers he's a man. He saluted. Behind him, 185 other men saluted simultaneously. Pendleton stood there speechless as the magnitude of what they were saying hit him like a depth charge. He'd spent 12 days believing he was becoming a monster, and his crew had spent 12 days watching him prove he wasn't. Slowly, Pendleton returned the salute. His voice, when it came, was rough with emotion. Thank you, all of you, for trusting the mathematics, for trusting me, for... He paused. For reminding me who I was before I started counting bodies. He dropped the salute. Set course for Manus. Let's go home. As the crew dispersed, Williamson came up beside him. Feel any different? Pendleton looked out at the ocean, where 5 submarines lay in silent darkness, where 526 men would never see home. No, but maybe someday I will." He walked back to his cabin. This time he opened Margaret's letters, all 17. Read them in order earliest to latest, reconstructing 12 days of a life that had continued while his had stopped. The last letter ended, "Come home to us. Please. We need you. Not the hero. Not the warrior. Just you." Pendleton folded the letter carefully, placed it back in its envelope. Then he picked up a pen and paper and began to write. "Dear Margaret, I'm coming home. I don't know what shape I'll be in when I arrive, but I'm coming home. Tell Sarah her father loves her. Tell her he fought in a war where mathematics met conscience, where duty met humanity, and where 186 men helped him remember which mattered more. I'll explain when I see you. All my love, Walt." He sealed the letter, gave it to the radio man for the next mail run. Then he lay down on his bunk and slept for the first time in 56 hours. And if he dreamed of oil slicks and empty ocean and 5 submarines descending into darkness, he didn't remember when he woke. Because somewhere between calculation and conscience, between duty and humanity, Walton Pendleton had found something that couldn't be measured or predicted: the understanding that wars are fought with weapons, but survived with memory, carried by men who refuse to forget the cost of each victory, written in blood and mathematics on an indifferent sea. May 31st, 1944. Manus Island, Admiralty Islands. 14:30 hours. England entered Seidler Harbor under gray skies, her hull streaked with rust and salt, her crew hollow-eyed and silent. No flags flew, no band played, just the low rumble of engines and the whisper of water against steel as she glided toward the dock. On the pier, Admiral Lockwood waited with a Navy photographer and 3 officers carrying paperwork. Behind them, a small crowd had gathered, sailors from other ships, mechanic supply personnel, all wanting to see the destroyer escort that had done the impossible. Pendleton stood on the bridge uniform, pressed for the first time in 12 days, medals pinned to his chest, though he couldn't remember when someone had put them there. His hands gripped the rail. His knuckles were white. "Ready, sir?" Williamson asked quietly. "No. They're going to want speeches, photos, handshakes." "I know. You're a hero, skipper. 5 submarines, 12 days. It's never been done before." Pendleton turned to look at him. His eyes were empty. "I don't feel like a hero, John. I feel like a man who got very good at killing and can't figure out how to stop." Before Williamson could respond, England's gangplank dropped and Admiral Lockwood strode aboard. "Captain Pendleton." His voice boomed across the deck. "By God, you did it. 5 kills. The Japanese are calling it the 12-day massacre. Tokyo Radio is broadcasting warnings about you. You're a legend." He extended his hand. Pendleton shook it mechanically. "Thank you, sir." "Thank you, son. You just changed submarine warfare forever. Hedgehog effectiveness up 1,700%. Every destroyer escort in the Pacific is being retrofitted and retrained based on your tactics." Lockwood's grip tightened. "You saved thousands of lives. Thousands. And took 526. The words came out before Pendleton could stop them. Lockwood's smile faltered. "Sir, No. You're right to remember." Lockwood's voice softened. "War makes us do terrible mathematics. We trade lives, 500 of theirs for 5,000 of ours, and tell ourselves it's justified. Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't. But the men who remember the cost, those are the ones who stay human." He released Pendleton's hand. "Shore duty request denied, Captain. But I'm giving you 2 weeks leave. Go to Sydney, see real buildings, drink real coffee. Try to remember what peace feels like, then report back for your next assignment." "Next assignment?" Pendleton's voice was flat. "Hunter-killer group operations, training new captains, teaching them how you think, how you calculate, how I kill." Lockwood met his eyes. For a long moment, neither man spoke. "Yes, how you kill. Because we need more men who can do it as well as you." He turned to leave, stopped, looked back. "Pendleton, I know what this patrol cost you. I see it in your face. But here's what you need to understand. The war doesn't care about cost. It just keeps demanding payment. And men like you, men who can make the terrible calculations and stay sane enough to function, we can't afford to lose you. What if I'm not sane anymore, sir? Lockwood's voice was almost gentle. Then you're exactly like the rest of us. He walked down the gangplank. The photographer approached camera ready. Captain Pendleton, if you could stand here for a photo. No. Sir, it's for Navy Public Relations. I said no. Pendleton's voice was steel. My crew gets the photo, not me. He turned to Williamson. Assemble the men, all of them. They earned this, not me. 20 minutes later, 186 sailors stood on England's deck while the photographer captured the moment. Pendleton stood in the back row, almost invisible, exactly where he wanted to be. June 1st, 1944. 0800 hours. Admiral's Quarters, Manus Island. Pendleton sat across from Lockwood's desk, holding a telegram that had arrived an hour ago. From Naval Intelligence, Tokyo Intercept to Subpac. Japanese Imperial Navy, memo May 30th. All submarine commanders avoid grid. November 7. USS England operating in area. New doctrine: run deep, stay silent. Trust, no tactics. Engagement, not recommended. Lockwood watched him read it twice. You scared them, Pendleton. The entire Japanese submarine force is changing tactics because of you. Operation Ago is effectively over. Admiral Toyota pulled his picket line back 300 miles. Our carrier sailed safely to Saipan yesterday. Not a single submarine report. Pendleton folded the telegram. His hands were steady now. How many lives does that save? Conservatively 10 to 15,000. If the carriers had been ambushed... Lockwood trailed off. You changed the war, Captain. By becoming what I was fighting against. What do you mean? Pendleton looked up. His voice was quiet but firm. The Japanese submarine commanders I killed, they were doing exactly what I did. Calculating. Hunting. Trying to sink ships to save their own people. We called them the enemy, but from their perspective, I was the monster. He paused. So what does that make me, Admiral A, hero, or just the more efficient killer? Lockwood leaned back in his chair, studying the young captain with the wire-rimmed glasses and the 1,000-yard stare. It makes you a man who survived by being better at mathematics than they were. Nothing more. Nothing less. And that's supposed to be enough. It has to be. Because war doesn't deal in morality, Pendleton. It deals in outcomes. And the outcome of your 12-day patrol is that thousands of American boys got to go home to their families instead of dying in ambushes. His voice hardened. You can feel guilty about the method, but don't you dare feel guilty about the result. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Pendleton spoke. My transfer request stands, sir. After my leave, I want shore duty. Training is fine, but no more hunting, no more killing. I'm done. Lockwood nodded slowly. Request noted. Now get out of here. Your wife sent 3 more telegrams yesterday. She's worried. Pendleton stood, saluted, turned to leave. Captain. Yes, sir. One more thing. Lockwood picked up a small wooden box from his desk. Navy Cross. Normally there'd be a ceremony, but given your disposition toward publicity, I'm giving it to you now. You earned it, whether you want it or not. He handed the box to Pendleton, who opened it once, looked at the metal inside, closed it. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me. Just remember, 526 dead is tragedy, but 15,000 saved is mathematics. You chose the right equation. Did I? Pendleton's voice was barely a whisper. Or did the equation choose me? He left before Lockwood could answer. June 15th, 1944. Sydney, Australia. Victoria Barracks Hotel. Pendleton sat alone in a civilian hotel room staring at a phone he'd been holding for 20 minutes. On the nightstand, the Navy Cross box sat unopened beside 17 letters from Margaret, now all read. All answered, all carefully filed away. He'd been on leave for 2 weeks. Hadn't left the hotel room except to eat. Hadn't spoken to anyone except the concierge. Just sat in silence trying to remember who he'd been before the mathematics started. At 1947 hours, he finally dialed. The phone rang 8 times before Margaret answered. "Hello." Her voice warm, alive, real, hit him like a depth charge. For 5 seconds, he couldn't speak. "Walt, is that you?" "It's me." His voice cracked. "I'm sorry I haven't called sooner. I didn't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just come home. Please. Sarah needs her father. I need my husband. Margaret, I need to tell you something. About what I did. About who I've become. You're a hero. The Navy sent us a telegram. 5 submarines. You saved. I killed 526 men." The words rushed out. "I calculated where they'd be when they'd surface, how they'd run. And I put explosives there. And I listened to them die. And then I did it again and again. Until I got so good at killing that the Japanese are afraid to surface in the entire Pacific theater." Silence on the line. Long enough that Pendleton thought she'd hung up. Then, "Are you coming home?" "I don't know if I can. The man you married believed mathematics could solve anything. But this, what I became, I don't know how to calculate my way back from this." "Then stop calculating." Her voice was firm. "Stop trying to solve it like an equation. Just come home, hold your daughter, let me hold you, and we'll figure out the rest together." "What if I can't stop seeing their faces?" "Then you'll see them, and I'll be there with you. Because that's what love is, Walt. Not fixing each other. Just being present when the mathematics fail." Pendleton closed his eyes. Tears ran down his face for the first time since he'd pressed that red button 12 days ago. "I love you." "I love you too. Now get on a ship and come home." "I will. I promise." He hung up, sat in silence, opened the Navy Cross box, and stared at the medal, a bronze cross suspended from a blue ribbon awarded for extraordinary heroism in combat. Extraordinary heroism. He'd sunk 5 submarines by being better at mathematics than scared men trying to survive. He'd changed naval warfare by calculating death with more precision than anyone in history. He'd saved thousands by drowning hundreds. Was that heroism or just efficiency? The phone rang. Pendleton answered. "Captain Pendleton. This is Communications Officer at Victoria Barracks. Urgent message from ComSubPac." "Go ahead." "Sir, Japanese submarine activity has increased in your former patrol sector. 6 new contacts. Admiral Lockwood is requesting USS England return to active duty immediately. Your crew is being recalled from leave. Report to Manus Island by June 20th for new patrol assignment." The words hit like bullets. "Understood. I'll be there." He hung up, stared at the Navy Cross. Then he closed the box, placed it in his duffel bag, and began packing. Because Margaret was right, he couldn't calculate his way back from what he'd become. But Lockwood was also right. War doesn't care about cost. It just keeps demanding payment. And Walton Pendleton, former high school math teacher, now the most effective submarine killer in naval history, was the currency the war had chosen. June 20th, 1944, Manus Island, 1400 hours. England's crew reassembled on the dock, 186 men who'd spent 2 weeks trying to forget 12 days they'd never escape. They were quieter now, harder. The mathematics of killing had changed them all. Pendleton arrived last duffel over his shoulder, Navy Cross still in its box unopened. He stopped at the gangplank, looked up at the ship that had become his coffin and his church. Williamson met him at the top. "Welcome back, Skipper. Thought you might not come." "So did I." "How was Sydney?" "Quiet, empty, too much time to think." Pendleton dropped his duffel. "What's the new assignment?" Same as before. Hunter-killer operations. 6 Japanese submarines operating north of Truk. Intelligence says they're using new tactics. Deeper patrols, irregular schedules, no radio transmissions. They learned from us. Yes, sir. They learned not to be predictable. Pendleton moved to the chart table in the CIC, studied the patrol grids. His hands moved automatically, compass ruler pencil drawing lines, calculating probabilities, hunting ghosts. They think irregular patterns make them safe, he said quietly. But randomness has patterns too. We just need to find them. Williamson watched him work, saw the terrible machinery in Pendleton's mind spinning back to life. Skipper, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why'd you come back? You could have refused, claimed medical, gone home to your family. Pendleton stopped drawing. His pencil hovered over the chart. Because 15,000 American sailors are alive right now. Because I killed 526 Japanese submariners. And if I stop now, if I go home and try to forget, those numbers reverse. The submarines start sinking our ships again. The ambushes restart. And everything we did, every calculation, every kill, every ghost I carry becomes meaningless. So you're doing this for them? For the sailors you saved? No. Pendleton's voice was hollow. I'm doing this because I'm already damned. And if I'm going to carry ghosts anyway, I might as well make sure they bought something worth the cost. He returned to his calculations. Williamson stood there watching his captain disappear back into mathematics and killing, and realized something terrible. The war hadn't broken Walton Pendleton. It had perfected him. Turned a man who believed in numbers into a weapon, who calculated death with inhuman precision. And the worst part wasn't that the Navy needed him. It was that he needed this too. Because out here alone in the Pacific hunting submarines, the mathematics made sense. The equations balanced. 526 deaths equaled 15,000 lives saved. The moral calculus was clear. It was only on land in quiet hotel rooms with telephones connecting him to wives and daughters, and the man he used to be, that the mathematics failed. October 30th, 1944, 16:47 hours. Leyte Gulf, Philippines. England was operating as part of Task Group 77.1, screening for the invasion fleet. 4 months after her legendary patrol, 6 more submarine contacts, 3 more kills. The number was 9 now. 9 submarines, 843 Japanese sailors. Pendleton had stopped counting weeks ago. Now he just calculated. The kamikaze came out of the sun at 16:47 hours, a Mitsubishi A6M0 engine screaming pilot, already dead in spirit, diving straight toward England's bridge. Gunners opened fire. 20mm cannons, 40mm Bofors, everything they had. Tracers lit the sky. The Zero shuddered, smoking, but kept coming. At the last second it veered not away, but toward the waterline. Struck England's starboard side just below the forward gun mount. The explosion was thunder and fire. 37 men died instantly. The ship lurched, began listing. Fire spread from the impact point toward the magazines. On the bridge, Pendleton grabbed the intercom. Damage control report static. Then Chief Moss's voice strained. Forward compartments flooding. Fire approaching magazine 1. Sir, if we don't abandon ship in 5 minutes. Flood the magazine, seal the compartments. We're not abandoning anything. Captain, the ship's going to sink. Then she sinks with me on her. Pendleton's voice was iron. But we're not going down without a fight. Pump teams to all sections. I want that fire out and those compartments sealed. Move. For 3 hours, England's crew fought the ship's death. Pumps screamed. Welders sealed breaches. Men formed bucket brigades when the pumps failed. And through it all, Pendleton stood on the bridge, refusing to leave, directing the battle against fire and flood with the same cold precision he'd used hunting submarines. At 19:47 hours, the last fire died. The flooding stopped. England listed 15 degrees to starboard. Her bow shattered, 37 of her crew dead. But she was afloat. Moss came to the bridge, face blackened with smoke, hands burned. She'll float, Captain. Barely. But she's done. No engines, no power, no guns. We'll have to tow her to Manus for salvage. Pendleton looked out at his ship. The vessel that had killed 9 submarines, changed naval warfare, turned him into a legend and a ghost. How many did we lose? 37 confirmed dead, 22 wounded. Pendleton closed his eyes. 37 more names. 37 more families receiving telegrams. 37 more ghosts to add to the 843 he already carried. Get the wounded to sickbay. Prepare the dead for burial. We'll hold service at dawn. Aye, sir. Moss started to leave, stopped. Captain, you saved the ship. You saved us. If you'd ordered abandoned ship, we'd have gone, but you didn't. You stayed and fought. That's not calculation. That's courage. Pendleton opened his eyes. They were empty. No, Chief. That's just a man who's killed so many people that he can't let his own die without fighting. It's not courage, it's guilt. He walked to his cabin, closed the door, sat on his bunk surrounded by 17 letters from Margaret he'd never answered after the first call. 37 more deaths. 880 dead total now. 15,000 saved. The mathematics still balanced. The equation still worked. So why did he feel like he'd lost all? November 15, 1944. Manus Island, salvage dock. England sat in dry dock, broken and burned, gutted for parts. Her Hedgehog launcher, the weapon that had changed submarine warfare, was being removed for museum display. Her hull would be scrapped, sold for steel, melted down into bullets and bombs that would kill more people in a war that wouldn't end. Pendleton stood on the dock, watching crews strip the ship that had been his home, his weapon, his coffin. Beside him, Williamson held transfer papers. Shore duty approved skipper, training command Pearl Harbor. You'll teach new captains Hedgehog tactics. Show them how to hunt, how to calculate, how to kill efficiently. How to become like me. Sir. That's what they want, isn't it? More men who can calculate death. More weapons who think they're still human. Pendleton took the papers. What about the crew? Dispersed. Some to new ships. Some to shore stations. Some... Williamson's voice caught. Some went home in boxes. Pendleton signed the transfer papers without reading them. One more question, John. Anything. Was it worth it? 9 submarines. 880 dead. 15,000 saved. 37 of our own killed. Was the mathematics worth it? Williamson looked at the broken ship, at the captain who'd become a ghost, at the weapon that had won battles by losing souls. I don't know, sir. I hope so. Because if it wasn't, then what the hell did we become? Pendleton folded the papers, placed them in his jacket pocket. We became what war needed us to be. Calculators, killers, men who could make terrible choices and keep functioning. Whether that's worth it. He looked at England one last time. History will decide. We just pay the cost. He walked away from the dock, away from the ship that had made him a legend, toward a future teaching other men how to carry ghosts with precision and mathematics, and the terrible understanding that sometimes victory isn't measured in lives saved, but in souls traded for equations that balance only on paper, never in the heart, where 37 more names joined 880 others in silent testimony. That freedom isn't free, it's purchased with mathematics written in blood on water, that forgets nothing and forgives nothing, and keeps all secrets in darkness below, where submarines and ships and men who calculated death with inhuman precision finally rest equal in the democracy of the deep. December 1944. Pearl Harbor Naval Training Command. Building 147, second floor classroom, C. Pendleton stood before 32 young officers, all of them newly commissioned, all of them eager, all of them still believing war was about glory instead of ghosts. Behind him, a chalkboard covered in trajectory calculations, sonar intercept angles, probability mathematics. The same equations that had killed 9 submarines and 880 men. Hedgehog effectiveness, he said, voice flat pointing to a number on the board. Increased from 1% to 17% after our 12-day patrol. That's 800% improvement. Navy doctrine now mandates Hedgehog installation on all destroyer escorts operating in Pacific Theater. A hand went up. Lieutenant Junior grade Marcus Chen, 23 years old, Annapolis graduate, top of his class. Sir, is it true you sank 5 submarines in 12 days? That the Japanese changed their entire submarine strategy because of you? Pendleton set down the chalk, turned to face the class. Yes. Could you tell us how you did it, sir? What tactics you used? The classroom fell silent. 32 young men leaned forward, hungry for the secret, the formula, the mathematics that would make them heroes. Pendleton walked to the front of his desk, sat on its edge, removed his glasses, cleaned them slowly with a handkerchief. I listened to scared men die, he said quietly. I calculated where they'd run when they were terrified. I predicted their mistakes. And I put explosives there. That's the tactic. That's the formula. Exploit fear with mathematics. The classroom shifted uncomfortably. But sir, another officer spoke up. You saved thousands of American lives by taking 880 Japanese ones. Pendleton replaced his glasses. Don't misunderstand me. I'd do it again. The mathematics work. The tactics work. But before you leave this classroom wanting to be like me, understand what it costs. I have a 2-year-old daughter I've never held. A wife who writes letters I can't answer. And every night I dream about oil slicks and debris fields and the exact number of men who drowned because I was better at trigonometry than they were. He stood, moved to the chalkboard, drew a simple equation. 526 deaths equals 15,000 lives saved. This is what war reduces us to. Trading lives like currency, calculating death like algebra problems. And the truly terrible part, it works. The equation balances, the tactics succeed, and men like me get medals for becoming very efficient at killing. He turned back to the class. So, yes, I'll teach you the mathematics, the sonar techniques, the firing solutions, everything that made USS England the most effective submarine hunter in history. But I won't lie to you about what it means. You'll go home heroes. And you'll spend the rest of your lives wondering if that's the same thing as being human. The bell rang. 32 officers filed out in silence. All except Chen, who lingered at the door. Captain Pendleton. Yes. Thank you, sir, for telling us the truth. The truth doesn't make it easier, Lieutenant. No, sir, but lies make it worse. Chen left. Pendleton stood alone in the empty classroom, staring at the equation on the chalkboard. The same mathematics he'd lived by for 12 days, the same calculations that had turned him into a weapon, the same numbers that balanced on paper but never in his heart. He erased the board, picked up his briefcase, walked to the door. On his desk, forgotten, lay a telegram that had arrived during class from Naval Personnel Command to LCDR W. Pendleton, USS England decommissioned for salvage. Formal scrapping scheduled. March 1945. Hedgehog launcher transferred to Naval Museum, Washington, D.C. Your presence requested for dedication ceremony. He read it once, folded it, placed it in his briefcase beside 17 letters from Margaret he still hadn't fully answered and a Navy Cross he'd never worn. The ship that had made him a legend was being melted down, turned into bullets and bombs, recycled into more war. Maybe that was fitting. Maybe weapons were meant to be remade into other weapons. Maybe that's all any of them were now. England, Pendleton, the Hedgehog, the mathematics, just tools for killing that would be repurposed until the war ended, or everyone forgot what they'd been used for. March 15th, 1945, Norfolk, Virginia. 1847 hours. Pendleton stood on the front porch of a house he'd bought but never lived in, holding a duffel bag and 30 days of accumulated leave orders. Through the window he could see Margaret moving in the kitchen, could hear faintly a child's laughter. His hand was on the doorknob, had been for 5 minutes. He couldn't turn it. Behind him, a taxi waited, engine idling. The driver had asked twice if he was getting out. Pendleton had said yes both times. But his hand wouldn't move, because on the other side of this door was a man he used to be. A teacher, a husband, a father. Someone who believed mathematics could solve anything without killing anyone. And Pendleton didn't know how to pretend to be that person anymore. The door opened. Margaret stood there, 28 years old, hair tied back, wearing an apron dusted with flour, holding their daughter Sarah on her hip. Walt. His name. Just his name. But the way she said it, with relief and fear and love and exhaustion, hit him harder than any depth charge. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have called. I should have written more. I should have—" She stepped forward, kissed him, put Sarah's hand in his. "You're home. That's enough." Sarah looked up at him with eyes that were exactly his, curious, calculating, seeing the world as a puzzle to solve. She was 2 years old, didn't know him, didn't recognize him, but she smiled anyway. "Daddy?" The word broke something inside him. He knelt down, let her tiny hand rest on his face, felt her fingers trace the exhaustion lines around his eyes. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm your daddy. You fight bad guys." He looked at Margaret. She nodded slightly. "She asks about you every day." Yes. I fought bad guys." "Did you win?" Pendleton picked her up, held her for the first time, felt her small weight against his chest, and wondered how something so light could be heavier than 9 submarines. "I don't know, Sarah. I think maybe nobody wins. We just stop fighting and try to remember who we were before it started." She didn't understand, just hugged his neck and said, "I'm glad you're home." Margaret paid the taxi driver, brought Pendleton's duffel inside, closed the door. And for the first time in 18 months, Walton Pendleton was home. That night, after Sarah was asleep, Margaret and Pendleton sat on the back porch. She'd asked him nothing about the war, nothing about the submarines, just sat beside him, holding his hand, letting silence be enough. Finally he spoke. "I killed 880 people, Margaret. I calculated where they'd be when they'd surface, how they'd run. And I put explosives there, 9 times. And every time it worked. Every single time." "And how many did you save?" 15,000, maybe more. The carrier groups sailed safely because the submarine picket line was destroyed. The invasion of Saipan succeeded because Japanese intelligence couldn't report fleet movements. The mathematics balance. The equation works. But you don't feel like it does. No. He looked at his hands, the same hands that had pressed the red button 9 times, that had calculated death with inhuman precision. "I feel like I traded my soul for numbers on a page. And the worst part, I'd do it again. Because the alternative, letting those submarines sink our carriers, letting 15,000 men die, that's worse. So I'm trapped in this place where I know I did the right thing, and I hate myself for it." Margaret squeezed his hand. "Walt, you're not a calculator. You're not a weapon. You're a man who made impossible choices in an impossible situation. And yes, you carry the weight. But that's what makes you human. The fact that you feel it. What if I don't want to feel it anymore?" "Then you'd be like the men who started this war. The ones who calculated death without conscience. You're not them. You never will be." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "Sarah needs a father. I need a husband. And you need to remember that you're more than 12 days of war. You taught algebra to teenagers. You believed in numbers that added up to something beautiful instead of deadly. That person is still in there. We just have to help him find his way back." Pendleton closed his eyes, breathed, let himself believe just for a moment that redemption was mathematics he could solve. August 15, 1945. The war ended. Japan surrendered after 2 atomic bombs demonstrated that mathematics had finally created death so efficient, so precise, so absolute that even war couldn't justify it anymore. Pendleton heard the news on the radio while teaching Sarah to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 numbers that meant fingers and toys, and learning not depth charges and submarines and corpses. "Daddy, what's atomic?" He set down the radio, picked her up, held her close. "It's when mathematics becomes so good at killing that it scares even the people who made it." She didn't understand, but she felt him shaking, so she hugged him tighter. That night, Margaret found him in the garage crying for the first time since he'd come home. Not for the 880 he'd killed, not even for the 37 crew members who'd died when England was struck. He was crying because the war was over and he'd survived, and somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, 9 submarines lay silent in darkness with 880 men who'd never see peace, never hold their children, never get the chance to stop being weapons, and remember how to be human. "They were just like me," he whispered, "doing their duty, following orders, trying to save their people by killing mine, and I was better at it. That's the only difference. I was better at mathematics." Margaret held him, said nothing, because some things can't be fixed with words. 1961. Pendleton retired from the Navy after 17 years. Commander rank, 2 Navy Crosses, 13 confirmed submarine kills, 4 more after England was scrapped. 4 more ghosts added to the calculation. He never wore his medals, never attended reunions, never spoke about the 12 days that changed submarine warfare. Instead, he went back to teaching high school mathematics in a small Virginia town, algebra, geometry, trigonometry for teenagers who'd rather be anywhere else. Sometimes late at night, former students would ask, "Mr. Pendleton, is it true you were a war hero that you sank submarines?" And he'd say, "I was a sailor who knew mathematics, that's all." They'd press for details. He'd change the subject, show them how quadratic equations worked, how geometry revealed hidden patterns, how numbers, when used properly, could build instead of destroy. One student decades later would write, "Mr. Pendleton taught us that mathematics was beautiful, that numbers were tools for creation, not destruction." I didn't learn until years after graduation that he'd spent part of his life proving that wasn't true. But he spent the rest of his life trying to make it true again. That's the lesson I remember most. 1973. Pendleton died at 66, heart attack, quick and quiet like he'd wanted. His funeral was small. Margaret. Sarah, now 31, a mathematics professor herself. 3 former students. 2 surviving crew members from England. No Navy honor guard. No 21-gun salute. He'd forbidden it in his will. His gravestone read, Walton Pendleton, 1907 to 1973. Navy Cross beloved husband and father. No mention of submarines. No mention of the 12 days. No mention of the mathematics that had killed 880 and saved 15,000. At the funeral, Williamson, now a retired captain himself, gave the eulogy. Walt Pendleton was the finest officer I ever served under. Not because he was fearless, but because he was afraid and did his duty anyway. Not because he was a killer, but because he killed when necessary and carried the weight of it for the rest of his life. He saved thousands. He haunted himself for the hundreds he took, and he spent 30 years teaching children that numbers were for building, not destroying. That's not a war hero. That's a man who fought his way back to humanity, and won. 1994. The second USS England, a guided missile cruiser that served for 32 years, was decommissioned and scrapped. Admiral Lockwood's promise, "There will always be an England in the United States Navy," was finally broken. But in the Naval Museum in Washington, D.C., the original Hedgehog launcher from DE-635 still stands, rusted, silent, a relic of war that changed submarine tactics forever. The placard reads, Forward-firing anti-submarine weapon WAW-2 dramatically increased kill rate against enemy submarines. No mention of Pendleton. No mention of the 12-day patrol. No mention of the 880 Japanese sailors or the 15,000 American ones. Just a weapon. Just mathematics. Just metal that once calculated death with terrible precision. But in Japanese naval archives declassified decades after the war, records confirm I-16, RO-104, RO-106, RO-108, RO-116, RO-105. All destroyed exactly where Pendleton's reports said. Every position accurate. Every calculation proven. Every number true. And in personal letters recovered from the wreckage, Japanese submarine commanders wrote final messages home. Tell my children I loved them. Tell my wife I did my duty. Tell Japan I tried. The same words American submariners wrote. The same prayers. The same mathematics of love and duty and sacrifice that transcend nationality, that make enemies identical in the democracy of the deep, where everyone drowns equally and no one wins. They just stop fighting long enough to count the cost. Today, the Pacific is calm where England hunted. The coordinates 3°12, 153°38. E and the others are just numbers on charts. The submarines are metal skeletons on the ocean floor. The oil slicks have long since dispersed. But memory remains, carried by those who survived, passed to children who pass it to theirs, whispered in classrooms where mathematics is taught as a language of creation, not destruction by teachers who sometimes pause mid-equation and remember that numbers once killed 880 people so 15,000 could live. USS England wasn't a warship. She was an idea that precision guided by human will can change the course of history, that mathematics can save or destroy depending on who calculates and why. That the difference between a weapon and a man is not what you're capable of, but what you choose to carry afterward. Walton Pendleton believed in numbers. War taught him numbers could kill. Peace taught him they could also build. He spent 12 days hunting submarines with mathematics. He spent 30 years teaching children that equations were beautiful. History remembers the 12 days. His students remember the 30 years. Maybe that's redemption. Maybe that's just mathematics finally balancing in the only place it matters, not on paper, but in the hearts of those who remember that behind every number is a name, behind every calculation is a choice. Behind every weapon is a human being who must decide what to do when the war ends and the ghosts remain, and the only equation left to solve is how to live with what you've done. The USS England was built to fight. But she's remembered because one man used her to prove that even in war, humanity could survive not unscathed, but present, not innocent, but accountable, not without cost, but without surrender. They built her from steel and mathematics, but she endures in memory and conscience in the understanding that some victories are measured not in enemies killed, but in the will to remain human, while doing what must be done to carry ghosts without becoming one to calculate death, while remembering that numbers have names and names have families, and families deserve teachers who show them. Mathematics can build worlds instead of destroying them. If you believe that names and stories must endure beyond metal and time, share this truth. Remember that war demands calculation, but peace demands memory. And memory, honest, painful, complete, is the only mathematics that truly saves us. In darkness below, 9 submarines rest. 880 sailors sleep. And above, in classrooms and museums and graveyards marked with simple stones, the legacy remains not of killing, but of remembering the cost. Not of victory, but of the human will to calculate, to conscience, to carry forward the terrible knowledge that we are capable of both precision and compassion, mathematics and morality, war, and the long journey home. There will always be an England not in steel, but in story. Not in weapons, but in warnings. Not in what we destroyed, but in what we chose to build after.